Today I want to talk about human rights. This is a crucial subject that concerns everyone, and I'm going to endeavor to talk about the key points that constitute this subject. Human rights. These are rights that every person has because of being a human. Where do we see these human rights come? We have personalities such as Roosevelt, the wife to President Franklin Roosevelt of USA back then in the 19th. Then why is it that it's this lady that spearheaded the fight for human rights? Historically, men have been known to be warmongers. That's why it's not surprising that in the latter days, it's women who decided to stand up for the rights of man. Then how do they come into existence? We shall see that earlier on we had the First World War, and in the First World War, after its end, we had the formation of the League of Nations. One of the reasons as to why this League of Nations was formed was to make sure that wars never happen again. Why? It was because they were leading to destruction of people's properties, a number of lives were being lost, and so forth. But surprisingly, the Second World War broke out, and it led to the same. So after the breakout of the Second World War, there was formation of the United Nations, and that was in the year 1945. With the formation of the United Nations, they had to tighten up to make sure that they don't repeat the same mistakes the League of Nations did. They had to be very refined to prevent any other war from breaking out. After the formation of the United Nations, all countries, more so those that were under British colonies and so forth, had to be put under the United Nations. And one of the conditions to be put in the United Nations was that country had to abide and promote human rights. Uganda became part of the UN in the year 1962. That was 25th October. We should remember that we got our independence on 9th October 1962. So we became part of the UN on 25th October of the same year. That's after we had become independent. So one of the conditions was we follow what? Human rights. Human rights, one of their elements is that they are perpetual. They are continuous. They move on from generations to generations. We inherited them. They are granted by God and not by the state. The elements that are constitute human rights, one, they are universal applicable. That means they apply everywhere. They are the same everywhere. After knowing that they are universal and knowing that they are inherited, they are never changing, they are granted by the supreme being, not the state, we shall see that for Uganda's case, they have been always violated. In our 1995 constitution, we have a Bill of Rights. This section, or this section of laws, it starts from clause 1 over Article 20 up to 50, up to Article 50. It's the same in every constitution of any other land, because it binds us as people who follow human rights. Article 20 itself provides for fundamental and other rights. Article 20 of the 1995 Constitution, it provides that they are inherited and not granted by the state. We have those that are non-derogable and those that are derogable. Article 44 guides on non-derogable rights. When I talk about non-derogable rights, it simply means those that can't be touched by the state. In other words, they have no exceptions. We have the example of freedom from torture. Then we have right to habeas corpus, that is to appear in court if at all you do anything wrong. Habeas corpus, torture, and so many others. Therefore, but we have freedom from torture, right to habeas corpus, and then fair treatment, fair hearing. It's a fair hearing. Then after knowing that, Article 28, it guides us on right to fair hearing, whereby if a person commits any wrong, that person has to be given a room so that he or she can explain on whatever happened and raise evidences. That's if she contends that she's not guilty. After knowing then the other derogable rights that can be touched, we have the example of right to life, that is Article 22. This can be touched in circumstances where the offense attracts a punishment of a death sentence. Also in wars, soldiers kill themselves, and even policemen as well kill people during riots. Why can it be touched? We shall see that under section 189 of the Penal Code Act, the maximum punishment for murder is death. Therefore, a person who kills another can as well be killed legally. Then you have other rights such as right to liberty. That is Article 23. Even that one can be questioned. Let's say you commit an offense, or you are alleged to have committed an offense. That means you have to be put in cells or prison, because it allows and gives room for the state to make thorough investigations to prove that indeed it's you who committed the offense. Why are human rights crucial? It is because it is only one specific animal that enjoys those rights, the class of Homo sapiens, or it's a scientific name for people. Those rights are only for people, they are never changing. Right to life, people have to be alive, and so forth. After knowing that they are very crucial, how do we proceed about them? Article 50 provides for that, whereby a person can go to the courts of law in case he or she sees another person's rights being violated. After knowing that, we have categories, different categories that enjoy these rights. We have children and women, that's Article 34, it guides on that. We have the disabled, you have the affirmative groups. You get, all these people are of different categories and they enjoy these rights. The children's rights are different from the other people's rights. We have, for example, right to own property, that is Article 26. This one can as well be guided with intellectual property rights, whereby if a person invents something, it's only that person has exclusive rights over such. Let's say if you own a land, you have exclusive rights over land. Then other rights follow there under. So when talking about human rights, you should know that they are specifically to be enjoyed by only one class of animals, which is the people themselves. They are not granted by the state. That's another key element. They are not granted by the state, but they are granted by a supreme being. Why do we call him a supreme being? To the to those who believe in religion, the supreme being is God. But then we also have traditionalists who believe there is a supreme being, much as for them it's another thing. So every religion has a supreme being of its own. So that's where human rights come from. They are natural. They exist by the purpose that we exist. They are the same everywhere. When you go to America, when you go to France, when you go everywhere, they are the same. Whether you are black, whether you are white, whether you are pink, they are the same everywhere. They are very crucial. And you proceed, as I've said, under Article 50, it guides on how you can proceed. If you see another person's right being violated, you can go to courts of law, whereby the High Court can handle such because it has original jurisdiction over any matter. So, after knowing that you've seen the key person, it was Eleanor Roosevelt. Then the other element is that these rights, we follow them basing on these conventions or treaties we sign with these party member countries. There are five countries that are on the that spearhead the decision making on the UN. We have America, we have France, we have Russia, we have China, and then Europe. These are France. Europe, they spearhead the decision making. So to us Ugandans and other African countries, we are just member states that help in decision making, but we become part of them by these different conventions we sign. For example, in intellectual property we had the Lusaka Agreement, then and so forth. So these treaties we sign, such as the Vienna Convention earlier on, are the ones that made us party to this to the UN and how we abide by. Human rights are universal. That means you can as well be questioned in the international courts of law, which is ICC, the International Criminal Court. That is, if you commit the crimes against humanity, such as using young boys and fighting civil wars, such as Connie. We recently had the example of Connie's soldier who was taken to the international court on the same, and he answered for that. That was Ongwen. So that means one crucial element about them is that for them you can be tried anywhere, whether you are in Uganda, Sudan. They don't care about the citizenship because they apply everywhere and they are the same. So for today, that's what we had for international human rights as well as domestic human rights. Thanks for listening.